Hello and welcome to another tutorial. In this one, we are gonna learn how to translate Figma designs into HTML, CSS and JavaScript, and also how to optimize that for mobile devices. This is completely beginner-friendly tutorial, so if you have a little bit of HTML, CSS and JavaScript knowledge and you want to have some projects under your belt, this is perfect for you. I don't want to waste any of your time. Let me show you what is the design that we are going to be using in this project, and let's start coding.
Code with Sloba.
In case you want to find another design, maybe for your other project, you should check figma.com/community. Here you can find plenty of designs, and most of them are free. You just need to open the design and click on Get a Copy. Some of them are not free, obviously. In this community, I found the design that we are going to be using for today's project. It's a book for landing page. If you never use Figma, it's very simple. On the left side, you have the layers. On the right side, you have the properties. In order to get the property for the component, you just need to click on it. In case you don't see the properties that you need, for example, if you are inspecting the text, you need to make sure that you're clicking on the right element on the left side. So if you click on a text, you have here text icon. On the right side, you have the properties that you have for a text, like alignments. So you have three tabs on the right side. One is for the design, the second one is for the prototype, and the third one is the one that we are going to be using the most, which is the inspect. Here you can see all the properties, like on the CSS, and also you get to copy the text, so you don't have to type everything over. And also you have the properties like the colors. So it's very useful. If you want to measure the distance between the elements, all you have to do is you need to click on the element and hover over the second element, and you get the property and the distance between the elements inside of the pixels. So if you want to export one of the things from this design, like for example, you want to export this image, make sure you click on the image itself, and you can go in the design and export. And it's very simple like this. So let's proceed and let's build our project. First, create the folder. I will name book landing page. Once that is done, open the code editor of your choice. For me, that is Visual Studio Code. This is the free code editor, and it's really powerful. Create the first landing page. The naming convention for landing pages and main files for the HTML is to call it index.html. We will have CSS and JavaScript file as well, but let's create another folder for them. So name it assets, and inside of the assets, create new file. Name it style.css. And let's add a file for JavaScript, main.js. This is the naming convention that I like to follow. You don't have to use that, except the fact that you should always be naming your main HTML file as index.html. To generate the code inside of the index.html using VS Code is really easy. You just have to start typing and you get these prefixes, which is from Emmet plugin. You can install that inside of the extensions here. You just click on that and voila, you get generated HTML code. I will set the word wrap property so that you can see when I shrink down the window here. So what we have generated is the definition of the document type, which is HTML. We have the HTML tags and the set language to English. We have the head tag and the body tag. Inside of the head tag, we have these meta tags, which we are not going to touch. And then we have title. So let's update that. Let's name it book landing page. Now let's open up our index file. And you can see we got the title of our page updated. I will open them one next to each other. Okay. Now I can include a couple of things that I need. So if you want to include the external assets or local assets, you do that here inside of your head tags. So if you want to make your page consistent on different browsers, you want to standardize the properties of different elements. So what I usually like to do is I like to use the normalize.css. There are a couple of ways to download this. You can use npm to install it, or you can directly download it. And as it says, it makes browser render all elements more consistently. So just click on the download, and the link to this normalized CSS file is going to be in the description. And you can copy paste this file. Now inside of the head, let me make it bigger. Just add new link. URL is going to be style sheet. And for the href, we're gonna paste the link that we just copied and close it. This is self-closing tag. Now, inside of our design, as you can see here, we're gonna have some icons. Actually, there's only one icon here, but we will add two of them for hamburger menu because we are gonna optimize this for mobile device. The easiest way to use and to implement the icons is to use some kind of a font icons. In this case, I will use Font Awesome. To install the Font Awesome, there are multiple ways. You can install this manually or using CDN. And for me, the easiest way to install this is to use the CDN. So scroll down and find where it says load all styles. And what you can do is just copy over this link and just place this inside of your head tag, like so. Apart from that, let's include our main style.css around main.js file. So add another link tag. Rel is going to be a style sheet as well. And source is going to be our assets folder and style CSS. For including the main.js file, we could use two options. If you have heavy content loading inside of the JS file, people usually include that before body closing tag, so that the content which is being loaded inside of the body tag is not being blocked. But in our case, we don't have anything heavy being loading inside of our main.js file, and it's not going to block content. So we will include it inside of the head tag. So add a script, and source for the script is going to be assets.main.js file. And now we have included everything that we need inside of our project. So we can close that and proceed to develop our page. So let me show you what we are gonna be building first. Let me close this Font Awesome. And we can start with the header. As you can see on this website, we have on the left side like logo, which is just text, and this icon, paper icon. And on the right side, we have the navigation. So we can start with that. On the content, we will have this main content, and we will have this aside element. And on the very bottom, we will have just these two buttons. It's very simple. Okay, so we can open our index.html file, and we can create our header tag. So header, and inside of the header, let's add a h2 tag, which is for title. So this is for this element. Let's copy the text. So make sure to click on the text itself, and you get the option here to copy it. You have the icon, copy, and it says here, copy to clipboard. Inside of the h2, which will actually give a class. So name it header_title. I like to follow this naming convention where the header is the container and the title is the child. So what we should do is we should give a class to header as well. And inside of the title, let's add a span. And inside of this span, we will paste the text. Next to it, let's add an icon. And here we are using font awesome icons. So the naming convention for the font awesome version 5 is that you need to give FA prefix to all of the classes. And for the font that we are going to be using here, as you can see, the designer left a comment. So this one is paper plain, FA solid paper plain. But for this version, we only need to include FA dash paper dash plain. If we save it, you can see that we got the icon there. For our case, we want to make the icon a little bit larger, so add FA-LG, which stands for large. And let's add a custom class that we can use to style it and add a different color. For example, the yellow one. Add a class plain.ico. On the right side, we have the navigation with the links. These links can be external or internal, depending on if you're building more pages to this website. For now, these are just going to be static, and on this page, they are going to be external link. So add a nav element for navigation, and let's add a class header underscore navigation. Inside of the header navigation, let's add anchor tags, and the links are going to be just pounds. So that is links for now. For the first one, it's home, then about, books, blog, contact. So let's add it home, and let's copy paste 5 times. Home, about, books, blog, and I think it's contact. Yes, contact. Okay, and there you go. There are two couple of elements that I want to add, which we don't see on the design. The first one is hamburger menu that we will be using on small devices, and the close icon that we will use to close the nav menu once it's opened. So add 2 additional I elements, excuse me, and add a class. Again, we will use FA, and for the hamburger menu, we will use FA bars. And let's add a custom class that we can use to additionally style it. And let's call it menu icon. Icon stands for the icon. This is like a shortcut. And let's copy paste this one. And for the second one, instead of the FA bars, let's call it FA times circle. And let's add it custom icon. It should be close icon. Okay. If you refresh, we can see that we added 2 additional icons, which are going to be saved on the desktop. Okay. Now we can go and apply some styles here. Before we proceed, I want to apply some main styles actually to define the colors that we are going to be using across our web page. So actually we only have 2 colors that we are going to be using. The first one is the yellow color, and the second one is this dark blue color, which is going to be actually our primary color. So I copied this over, and what I want to use the variables inside of the CSS. The best convention is to define them inside of the root selector, so it's applied to every single tag inside of your web page. And how you define it is we will just name the first one as primary color and give it the property. The second one, let's call it accent color, and let's give the value of this yellow. It's copied over to clipboard and just paste it here. Before we proceed to the header tag, I want to include all the fonts that we have on our website. So there are 2 fonts actually that we're going to be using. If you inspect the header tag and make sure to click on the text, so you can see that we're using iStock web font. These fonts are free and you can download them on web. I will include them inside of the repository, but you can also just Google them and you can find and download them. The second font that we're going to be using is the Poppins font. So as you can see here, I already downloaded all these fonts, and I will just copy them inside of the new folder. But what you can do, obviously, you can download them from the repository that I will provide inside of the description of this video, or you can just go and Google the names of these fonts. They're free. Inside of the assets folder, let's add new folder for the fonts. Let's name it font. And I will just reveal that in File Explorer. Here, I will just paste the fonts that we just created. Now let's include them. Let's use font face property to include them. And the font family for the first font, let it be iStock Web. For the URL, we placed it inside of the font. And this one is going to be iStock Web regular. This is the regular one. I will just copy this property. And I will include the bold one and set the font weight to 700. Actually, I won't be using all the fonts that I downloaded, only 2 fonts for iStock Web and 2 fonts for Poppins. So let me paste it again. The third font is going to be Poppins with 2p. And for the URL, let's add font / Poppins light. And this one is going to use the font weight to 200. Font weight of 200. And the last one is the font Poppins, but the bold one. Font is Poppins bold, and the font weight here is 700. With this, we defined all the styles that we want before we start developing. So we have the root with the colors that we are going to be using. If you're developing more complex website, you will have much more colors or even color palette. And these are the fonts that we're going to be using to develop it. So the first thing which I want to develop is actually to apply the styles is for the header. So let me copy over the class name. The first thing is obviously we want this to be aligned. So right now it's next to each other, it's under each other, and we want to be next to each other. So the easiest way to achieve this result is to use the display flags. And let me just see. For some reason, this is not working. Let me just make sure that it's included correctly. And as you can see, we have used the source attribute instead of the href. So we should update that to href. Let me close the head tag. And if we check the navigation, we have placed that inside of the h2, which is the title. This should be on a separate, on its own, along with the icons. So let me just remove that and move that from outside of the h2 text. So make sure that the title is on its own and the navigation is on its own. So if we save this and refresh, we should see them next to each other. Okay, we can proceed now. Now let's apply some styles to the header itself. Continue with applying. So I want to spread them across. So use the justify content space between. Let's add some padding on the top. So let's see what are the properties. So just click on the element and we can see that the distance is 81 pixels. So padding top, 81 pixels, like so. And let's add some maximum width. So let's see. We can click on the first element, hold shift and click on the second one. And this selects both of these elements. And we get the width of the entire container. So what we can do is we can just set the max width to 1231. So let's add a max width to 1231 pixels. Okay. And what I want to do, I want to center it. Actually, on this screen, because it's small, you cannot see it. If I zoom out, you can see that it's on the left side, but we want to make it centered. set the margin to 0 and auto. And for the font, let's see what is the font. Select the text, go to the inspect, and you can see font is iStockWeb 700. But this is just the wrapper, so let's just add font family to iStockWeb. And make sure that you have the single quotes. Okay, at least this is what I like to follow. Now let's add some styles to our title. Copy here the class name. First, I want to reset this title, because if we inspect, let me just open the debugger tools. You can see that H2 has some default margin. You can see here as well. Here, it has some default margin. So let's remove that. So margin 0. Let me close this. Margin 0. And I want to align the items inside of the H1 as well. So let's use display flags. Display flags. And align item center. This is the easiest way to align the items. Okay, you can see they are more aligned now. Okay, now I want to apply some styles to the text itself. So we placed the title inside of the span. So let's just target that. Or we can use header span, like so. And now let's add it a font properties. If I go and click font weight is 700, so this is bold. Font weight 700. Okay, font size. Let's see what is the font size. Font size is 40 pixels. 40 pixels. Let's add some margin and distance between the icon and the text. So let's inspect that. Okay. As you can see, it's 10 pixels. So set the margin right to 10 pixels. Let me refresh. Okay. And let's update the color. Here we were going to use the dark one. So it's the primary color. To use it, just use the var function and pass in the primary color. Okay. And that gets updated. Now let's add some styles to our icon here. The class that we used is the plain icon, which is a paper plane. Okay. Header plain. I just want to give it different color. Okay. So the color is going to be the accent one. As you may inspect it here, make sure to click on the paper plane and on the vector, and you get this yellow color. Okay, so make the color var accent color, save it and refresh it. And that's it. Now what I want to do is I want to proceed on the right side and style this. But before we proceed, let's hide the icons so that they are not bothering us. Let's select the menu icon here, header, dot header menu icon, and the other one is, let me just copy text, close icon. And set them to display none. Okay, that's much better. Now let's apply some style to header navigation. The class that we use is header underscore navigation. So I like to copy things over so that I don't have the typos. Let's remove the decoration. As you can see, we don't have any. Just scroll on the right side. You don't have any text decoration here, which is used usually for links, but you can add that for on hover maybe. So you need to target header a links and add a text decoration to none. Okay. We want to add some separation. So let's measure the distance between them. Click on the link, and as you can see, it's 29. So add margin left 29 pixels. Okay. Like so. Let's add a font size, which is 36. We already set the font family on the entire header tag, 36 pixels. And let's set the color to the primary one. Color is var dash primary. As we can see, it's using this dark blue color, which is the primary one. Okay. Let's save it. Let's refresh. And that's it. Now let's apply some styles to header navigation as well. I want to center it a little bit more, so let's use display flags as well. Again, and let's align items to center. Like so. And let's set the height of this navigation. How we can do that is just click on the navbar. And as you can see, the height, you can see here as well, height is 52 pixels. So this way, this is going to be more aligned, these two elements. So height to 52 pixels. Like that. And I think that sums it up. And now we can proceed to the main area. So the first section in the main area which we can build is the left side, which is going to be an aside, because it's easier and faster to develop. We will only have the wrapper and the circle icon, the circle element actually, and this image. So let's do that. Open the index.html file and let's shrink down the header. And let's add a div. Let's name this div and give it a class of wrapper, like so. And like I said, we will have a side on the left side, and we will have main on the right side. Inside of the aside, we will have another div with a class of book. And inside of the book, we will have that circle. So let's add a class book underscore circle. Inside of that, let's place an image with a book itself. Let's add a source, and let's add an alt attribute for screen readers. Don't forget that. I will just name it book. And the image is self-closing tag. For the source, we need first to download the book itself. So like we showed previously, in order to download the asset, you just need to click on it, make sure that it's clicked on the correct asset, go to the design, and go and export. As you can see, it's already downloaded. I will open that up inside of the downloads folder. Got that up. Close the downloads. And inside of the code editor, create new folder. And let's name it images. And I will just reveal that in the file explorer and paste that in. I will also rename it so it's more human readable. Let's name it a book.png. Okay. Let me close the header again, and we can use the source as assets images book.png. Okay. If I refresh, we can see that the image is loading correctly. Now let's apply some styles to it. Okay. Open up first. What I want to do is I want to apply some styles to the wrapper. This is the main wrapper, and we want to separate the width on the aside and the main content to 50%. So let's set the display to flex. This is the easiest way, at least for me, to do so. Now, for the aside, we want to add a width of 50%. Wrapper aside, add a width of 50%. And now it will only take the 50% of the page itself. So you cannot see it right now, but if you go to the wrapper and the book, you can see it here. Okay. Now let's add some separation between the title and this book. So let me go and measure this. If you click on the circle, and we need to be in the inspect mode, you see it's 46 pixels. So let's add margin top 46, and let's add a position relative. Why? Because the circle is going to be positioned absolutely, so we need to set the aside container to be relative, so it's not overflowing or going outside of it. Okay. Now let's add some properties to the aside itself. No, actually we add the property to the side, but to book.circle. Okay. Okay. So let's create that circle. Now let's see the dimensions of it. You can see that the width and the height are 785 pixels. We can copy it. This is a good thing about the Figma. We get some styles already predefined. We want to set the background to our accent color. So background color bar accent color. Okay. Let's see what we got. And we want to make this as a circle. So set the border radius to 50%. Okay. Like so. Now let's position it differently. So we will be using position absolute, and set the right. Let's just see what is the distance between them, between the two items. So click on the left side and just hover over the right side. It's 84 pixels. So set the right to 84 pixels. Okay. And in order to center the book here, let's add a display flex property. Display flex. Okay. And justify content to center and align items to center. Okay. This way we can align the book like so. Okay. Let me just zoom out a little bit so that you can see. And later on we will style it more on the smaller devices. The next thing that I want to do is when you're applying position absolute to some of the elements, if you want their wrapper or the root element container to have the same size, you need to apply the height to it. As you can see, the book circle has this height of 785 pixels, but the book itself, it doesn't, because it's being positioned absolute. So what we can do is, in order to avoid the mess in our layout, we can just apply these styles to our book wrapper as well. So targeted book at a height of 785 pixels. And let's add some margin on the bottom. Margin bottom. Let's add 55 pixels. So this is in order to get some separation on the bottom once we start scrolling. Yes. Now we can proceed on the main side. Let me open up the index. Let me close or shrink the aside. And now inside of the main file, we can start coding. Okay, let me switch over the right side. Here we have the title and we have the description on the bottom. Okay, so for the title itself, let's add an H1 tag. Okay, let me click on it and let me copy the text like so. So inside of the main tag, add H1 and just paste in. Make sure to format the text correctly. Here we didn't have the space after the comma. So sometimes it's not going to be pixel perfect with the text depending on how designer created. But you can see that designer here manually has been creating the break lines because free should be available to be placed here. But yeah, I will just leave it as it is on default. Below the H1, let's add a paragraph. And let's just copy the text from the paragraph here. And below that, we want to add the buttons. So let's create new div, add a class of buttons. Now, let me add a class of buttons. And let me add 2 buttons here. The first one is going to have text buy now. Okay, let me copy that. And the second one has text read more. Here, let me click on the correct layer and just copy the text. Like so. And let's add some classes so that we can style them directly. First one, button dash by underscore actually by dash now. And the second one, class button buttons. If we want to follow the same naming convention, then the container is buttons here and by now. On the second one, it's buttons read dash more. Okay. Like so. And now we can style this. Okay, so the first thing which we want to do is let's apply the similar settings to the main as we did on the wrapper. Okay, so let's target the main and let's add a width to 50%. So it's only taking the half of the page. 50%, like so. Let me zoom in a little bit, okay. Now let's add some margin in between these two. So as you can see, there is much more separation. And here is 91 pixels. So let's add margin top 91 pixels, okay. And let's add a max width. Let's see what is the maximum width. It's 556. So the content is not going more than 556. Actually, it's 571 here for the buttons. So let's use that one. Max width 571 pixels. Okay, in case, let me just repeat. In case you want to select 2 elements, you just hold Shift and you get the entire size of these 2 elements in the container. Okay, let's save that up. And now we get the exact measurement. Okay, in case you want to align these two, so as you can see in the design, we have these two aligned, so we can add some margin to the header. So let's find the header navigation here, and let's add a little bit of margin on the right side. So margin right 5 pixels, like so. Actually, I think we will need much more. So let's add like 20 pixels. I think this is too much. What we can do is we can use the ruler and you can actually see what is the required here. So you can set the values. So I'm using the ruler extension and you can check whether it's aligned or not. So you can be really precise with your measurements. So let's see the 10 pixels and you can just measure again and you can see the 10 pixels is the correct amount. So in case you're wondering what is the designer, what is the tool that I'm using, it's designer tools here. Yeah, that's the name of the extension. So you can click on it and you can see this is the site of this extension. So this is the person who created this ruler, very helpful tool. Okay. Let's proceed with the main. So now I want to apply some styles to our header. Let's see what is the color of it. Main H1, and the color should be the primary one. So if you click on the layer of the text, the actual color should be, yes, the primary one. Okay, so set the color to the primary from our color scheme. So var dash primary color. Okay, set the font size here to, let me just check in the Figma, the font size is 48 pixels, and we can copy the font weight as well. Just remove this and let me paste the font weight to 700 and font size to 48 pixels. like so. We want to change the font family, so set the font family to Poppins. Poppins, okay, like that. And let's remove the margin on the top. So as you can see, again here H1 tag has some pretty default margins, and let's remove it. So on the very top, margin top, set margin top 0, and on the bottom, let's measure what is the distance. As you can see, it's 14 pixels. Margin bottom, 14 pixels. If you refresh, it should look much more as on the design. So the next one is the paragraph below it, main P, okay. Let's first set the font size. Let me click on the text, and the font size here is 20 pixels. Font size 20 pixels, okay. Font family is the same, Poppins. I can copy this setting, okay. Font weight, you can just see the font weight is 275, which is unstandard. We'll just use 200. 200. Okay, that looks good. And we want to set the margin bottom. Let's say margin bottom. Let's see what is the separation from the description. Actually, you can see that designer hasn't created the exact container for these two elements, and you cannot measure the distance between the text and the buttons. So we will just use the random value here. What you can do is you can use maybe the ruler to measure this out, but I will just use the random value here. So margin bottom, let's add 50 pixels here. Okay. And let me see we forgot the color of the text for the bottom one. And actually the color of this text is black one. So let's add a color, black, like so. This is great. Now what we can do is we want to add some styles to our buttons, right? So the class is called the buttons. Buttons. I want to align them. Obviously as here. So I want to add some space. So there are a couple ways you can do this. What I like to use is the display flags and then just to separate them to the edges of the wrapper. So that's why I use display flags and justify content, space between them. Space between, okay. And let's add some margin on the bottom so that we have space once we start scrolling and we are on the mobile devices. So let's add 20 pixels. Okay. As you can see, they are now separated. It doesn't look like on the design, but they must be much bigger, but you can see that they're on the edges of their containers. So let's style the buttons now. So buttons underscore. The first one is buy now. If you want to buy the book, the buy now, okay. And let's add the background color. This one uses the accent color, as you can see, the yellow one. So let's add a background color to accent color, okay. And let's add the word. You can go to the view. Actually, let me just show you. You can go to, sorry, once again, you can go to view and word wrap, so that you don't have to scroll around. Buttons by now, okay, we set that. Now let's set the font size. Font size, make sure to click on the text itself. Font size is 32 pixels. 32 pixels. And font family is Poppins here. Okay, we can copy it. If you define it as this name. So on the definition of the fonts, you can use whatever you like here, as long as you include the URL. But I named it exactly the same as it's on Figma design, so it's much easier. You can just copy the rule over. The font is Font family is Poppins. The font weight is, I believe, is bold. Yeah, it's 700. 700. And let's add the color, which is dark, and that's primary color. Okay. Let's see. Let's look much better. But we want to remove this outline, and also we want to make them circle and much bigger. So these styles are going to be the same for both of these buttons. So let's add that. Let's add buttons, and let's target button. So let's remove the border none, and let's add some border radius. Let's see what is the border radius here. If we click on the button itself, we can find the border radius on the bottom, which says 50 pixels. I can copy that and paste, and now we can see that we have this border radius like so, but what we want to do is we want to add some padding, so it's much bigger. If you click on the text, we can hover over and see what is the distance. On top it's 16 on the bottom, and on the right side is 47, and on the left side is 47 as well. So 16, 47. Let's add padding. Padding, 16 on the bottom and top, and 47 on the left and the right side. If we save this, we get the buttons like on the design. Okay, let's now proceed with the second button. The name should be buttons underscore read dash more. Okay. Here the background color is going to be the primary one. You can tell that by the eye. Primary color, okay. Let's set the font size. Select the text, and the font size is 32 pixels. Font size is 32 pixels. And the font weight is bold as well. So it's 700. Okay. Like so, we can see that the color of the text is not readable because here it's white and the font family is different. So font family should be Poppins as well. And the color should be white. And now we get the final look of the button. And with this sums up our website. So basically this web page is completely done. It's very simple, but yeah, very effective. The next thing which we want to do is, as you can see, this is the final look. It looks exactly the same, except the fact that there are some differences in the text break, but I like to leave them as default. You can achieve the same result as on the design using the break tags, but that's not something that I want to do. So this looks great for me. What we want to do next is we want to optimize this for mobile devices and for the tablets. So if I open up the developer tools, and if I turn on this device toolbar, we can select the devices that we want to target for. And let's say we want to use this tablet. Let me refresh this, and we can start developing here. So I will apply the same style for the mobiles and the tablets. We can go more into details and optimize for every specific device, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to apply some general rules which will fix our website and make it look good on most of the devices. So actually what I can do here is I can use some bigger resolution, okay, like so. Let me refresh and let's start. The first thing which we want to do is obviously the header part. Let me just restart it again. Okay, so let's use the media queries, media, and let's target the screen and set the max width to 1400 pixels. Okay, so these rules that we're going to apply here are going to be applied to all the screens that have less than 1400 pixels. This is the breakpoint where it starts to break down and where it starts to lose the content, as we can see here. First, let's target the header. and let's reduce the width of it so that we have some padding on the left and the right side. This is one of the ways of doing so. So width 90%, and let's reduce the padding on the top. Here we add like 91 or something. So let's add padding top 20 pixels. On smaller devices, the space is much more valuable. So that's why you want to reduce the paddings, reduce the margins, reduce the fonts. And yes, you want to save more space because these devices are smaller. Now let's add some style to head navigation. So let me wrap this and copy the class name. So what we want to do with navigation here, it starts to break down. So what I want to do is I want to give it absolute positioning and make it to take the entire screen. And we can toggle it on the button, hamburger menu, and close it. Excuse me. So let's position it absolute. Like so. Let's add a background color to the primary one. Okay. Let's position it on the top 0 and left 0, and let's add it to be the full width and the full height. So width 100% and the height 100%. So let's see how this looks. Height 100%. And as you can see, it takes the full width and height, but you cannot see it because actually, let me just see 1 second. We actually need to, okay, this is good. Let me just see. We just need to apply the Z index to 1, so it's on top of every element out there, like so. But the background color for some reason is not working. So let me see. The reason for that is that we're using just primary. We don't have that color defined. We need primary color. And now it's going to apply, yes, the background color. The reason why we can see the text is because the text is the same color as the background. So let's fix that. Let's use the head navigation as well, again, and target the anchor tags. And the color, let's add the color to the accent one. Accent color. And we can see that now. Okay. Now let's what I want to do here is I want to display them as a block element, so one below the other. To do that, we will first need to add a display block property here, because on the top you're using display flags. So use the display block here, and now we can see that the display flags rules are not being applied. And here we also want to apply display block. Okay. The next thing is we want to align it to center, text align center. And let's add some margin. So let's add margin 20 pixels on top and the bottom, and on the left and the right side, remove the margin. So it's nice and centered. That looks nice. Now we want to hide this because this is going to be opened only when we click on the hamburger menu. So apply the rule display none to header navigation, like so, and we'll lose this one. Okay, so what we want to display instead is the header.menu icon. Okay, and set it to display block, like so, here. Now let's apply some styles there. Let's increase it. So in order to increase the icons with Font Awesome, you just increase the font size. So use the font size to 30 pixels. It's much bigger now. And in order to change the color of it, you change the color as regular as any other font. So use the color, and we will use for the primary color. Okay. And set the line height to 45 pixels, so it's more centered, like so. And set the cursor to pointer in case you're using a laptop. Okay, so that you know that you need to click on it in order to something happen. Later, we will use JavaScript in order to toggle these styles. Okay. And now the thing that I forgot is once we open up the header navigation, so let's say display block, we need to have an icon here to close the menu. So let's display the close icon, header close icon. Okay. Set to display to block. This will actually have display none as well at the beginning, and it will only show when we open the menu. Let me just see if display block. The reason why we don't see this is because it's hidden. So let's use z index to 1. And now we can see it. It's very small, so let's increase it. Set the font size again to 30 pixels. Okay. Let's position it absolute. Position absolute and set the top to 20 pixels and the right position to 20 pixels as well. Okay. Now it's nice and aligned. And set the color to var accent color. Okay. And this is the look that I wanted. You can also add a cursor pointer if you want. I like that little touch. And this is going to be hidden as well for now. So add a property display none, and for the head navigation as well, display none. Okay, cool. Now we can proceed with our main wrapper area. So now we want to display them one on top of each other. So let's remove or actually add a flex direction. So target the wrapper and add a flex direction to be column. Okay. And now you can see they're on top of each other. But we just want to align them to the center. So use the align items center. Okay. And they're more centered. Obviously, there are some rules that we need to reset in order to make everything completely centered, but this looks much more closer to the look that we want to achieve. So let's start with applying some default rules. So target the main and the aside. The wrapper aside. You could also use the wrapper main as well for the main. And let's set the width to 90%. In this case, I'm using the same with the navigation setting. The 90% means that we have the 10% separation on both sides. Let's set the max width of the element to 100%. So it doesn't go over those boundaries of the element. And let's add some margin on top. Actually, we do have margin on both of these elements, but it's less than 20 pixel, the value that I'm going to be setting right now. 20 pixels. As you can see, now the distance is much smaller here and there. Because like I said, on the smaller devices, the space matters much more. So always try to reduce the font sizes and the spaces that you have. It's going to be much more valuable, and the user has to scroll much less. So let's reduce the width of the image. So book of the circle, actually, book circle. Or actually, let's set first the image itself. So set the max width to 150 pixels. Okay, let's see. Like so. And let's target the book circle as well. First, set the position to be the initial one. So we're removing the absolute positioning. Set the max width to be much less. So let's say 300 pixels. And we get this weird shape because the height is not the 300, which needs to be exactly in proportion with the height and the width. So let's say the max height to 300 pixels and set the width to be 100% of this container. And this is much better. Now we want to center this, so set the margin to 0 and auto. Okay, and the reason why we get this separation is because we set the height to the book element as well, which is the wrapper of our book circle. So target the book and set the height to be also 300 pixels. Okay, let's refresh, and there you go. Also, let's reduce the bottom margin to 0, so there is less separation. That looks good. Now let's reduce the font size of the H1 title. So set the font size to 24 pixels and reduce the size of the paragraphs, or actually one paragraph that we have. So main P font size 16. Okay, let's see. Much better. And now we want to reduce the size of these buttons. So let's target the name is buttons, read by now, and first one is by now, and the second one is read more. Yes. And let's add a font size to 16 pixels, which is much less. And we can even reduce it further down. So if you go to, let's say, the mobile device, you can see that they need to be smaller, so we don't have these overlaps. So what we can do is we can use the buttons button, the same class that we used before, and just set the padding to 16, let's say 16 pixels and 25 pixels. This is on top and the bottom, this is on the left and the right side. If we refresh, there you go. So this looks much better. The last thing which we want to do is we want to apply some JavaScript in order to open the navigation and to close the navigation. So inside of our main.js file, let's create a function which will do just that. So now we can enlarge our Visual Studio Code because we're working on the small screen here. And let's add a function and call it toggle menu. Okay. This toggle menu function will receive a display state property, and we will use this property to alter the navigation and the icon. So first, let's go and add some divs, actually some IDs to our elements that we are going to be altering. So add a div to add an ID to header navigation, and let's name it header_navigation. And let's add an ID to the icon as well. So ID equals to close icon, like so. Now we can easily get these elements in the JavaScript. So first one is the navigation. Const nav for navigation equals document.get element by ID. And we named it header_nav_navigation. Let me set the view to word wrap as well. Okay. And the second element is the close icon. So const close icon equals document.get element by ID. And we name it, I think it's close icon. Yeah, close icon, like so. Copy it over here. And now we can alter the states of these two elements. So set the nav style display to this display state that we are using. So we will pass these values from the HTML itself, so to the display state. And we will use the same for the close icon. Like so. Okay, now we will call this method from the menu icon. So once we click on it, use the onClick event and call the toggle menu. And once we click on the menu icon, we want the display state to be block. Use the single quotes. Okay, let's try that out. If I refresh the page and I click on the hamburger menu, we set the display block style to the header navigation and for the close icon. If I click on the close icon, nothing happens because we haven't applied click event here. So let's add that. So on click toggle menu, call this toggle menu function, and let's add a style, display none. Let's refresh. Open the navigation menu and close the navigation menu. And with this, we have completed our website. As you can see, it's a very simple but yet very effective website. We created all these things according to the design from Figma. And also, we optimized this for mobile devices. We added a little bit of JavaScript in order to make this website a little bit more dynamic, and so it's more optimized for touch screens and smaller screens. And that's it. I hope you guys learned a couple of things here and there, and these principles you can apply to much more complex user interfaces and learn what you want to proceed more.
Well, that's all for this video.
And thanks for stopping by.
And don't forget to subscribe.
Code with Sloba.
Thank you for watching the entire video. To see more videos like this, click here.